Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 4, Text 12. Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye yavuttama parayana janaha jivanti natmartham asau parashrayam mumocho nirvidya kutah kalevaram. Synonyms: Shivaya, welfare; Lokasya, of all living beings; Bhavaya, for flourishing; Bhutaye, for economic development; Ye, one who is; Uttama Shloka Parayanaha, devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead; Janaha, men; Jivanti, do live; Na, but not; Atmartham, selfish interest; Asau, that; Parashrayam, shelter for others; Mumocha, gave up; Nirvidya, being freed from all attachment; Kutaha, for what reason; Kalevaram, mortal body. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation: Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So, even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was shelter for others? Purport: Parikshit Maharaja was an ideal king and householder because he was a devotee of the personality of Godhead. A devotee of the Lord automatically has all good qualifications, and the emperor was a typical example of this. Personally, he had no attachment for all the worldly opulences in his possession. But since he was king for the all around welfare of his citizens, he was always busy in the welfare work of the public, not only for this life but also for the next. He would not allow slaughterhouses or killing of cows. He was not a foolish and partial administrator who would arrange for the protection of one living being and allow another to be killed. Because he was a devotee of the Lord, he knew perfectly well how to conduct his administration for everyone's happiness, men, animals, plants, and all living creatures. He was not selfishly interested. Selfishness is either self-centered or self-extended. He was neither. His interest was to please the supreme truth, personality of Godhead. The king is the representative of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the king's interest must be identical with that of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord wants all living beings to be obedient to him and thereby become happy. Therefore, the king's interest is to guide all subjects back to the kingdom of God. Hence, the activities of the citizens should be so coordinated that they can at the end go back home, back to Godhead. Under the administration of a representative king, the kingdom is full of opulence. At that time, human beings need not eat animals. There are ample food grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables, so that the human beings as well as the animals can eat sumptuously and to their heart's content. If all living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rules, there cannot be any disturbance between one living being and another. Emperor Parikshit was a worthy king, and therefore all were happy during his reign. Text 13. Tat sarvam nah samochakshva prushto yad iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat. Synonyms: Tat, that; Sarvam, all; Nah, unto us; Samachakshva, clearly explain, Prushtaha, questioned, Yat iha, herein, Kinchana, all that, Manye, we think, Tvam, you, Vishaye, in all subjects, Vacham, meanings of words, Snatam, fully acquainted, Anyatra, except, Chandasat, portion of the Vedas. Translation and purport by His Divinity Sabhi Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Purport. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the Parivrajakas. The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, but the Parivrajakacharyas or learned preachers are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivrajakacharyas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by assent and meter by the Brahmanas, who are meant for administering Vedic rites. Yet, it should not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in different ways. There is no difference also between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and Itihasa. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyandhina Shruti that all the Vedas, namely the Sama, Atharva, Rug, Yajur, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, etc., are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. The only difference is that the Vedic mantras are mostly begun with Pranava Omkara, and it requires some training to practice the metric pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that does not mean that Srimad Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is the ripened fruit of all the Vedas, as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, is absorbed in the studies of the Bhagavatam, although he is already self-realized. Srila Suta Goswami is following his footsteps, and therefore his position is not the least less important because he was not expert in chanting Vedic mantras with metric pronunciation, which depends more on practice than actual realization. Realization is more important than parrot-like chanting. Text 14. Suta uvacha dvapare samunuprapte tritiye yugaparyye jatah parasharad yogi vasavyam kalayahare. Synonyms. Sutaha, Suta Goswami, Uvacha, said, Dvapare, in the second millennium, Samanuprapte, on the advent of Tritiye, third, Yuga, millennium, Paryaye, in the place of Jataha, was begotten, Parasharat, by Parashara, Yogi, the great sage, Vasavyam, in the womb of the daughter of Vasu, Kalaya, in the plenary portion, Hare, of the personality of Godhead. Translation and purport by His Divinity Abhay Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Suta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Purport. There is a chronological order of the four millenniums, namely Satya, Dwapara, Treta and Kali. but sometimes there is overlapping. During the regime of Vaivashvata Manu, there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the 4 millenniums, and the third millennium appeared prior to the second. In that particular millennium, Lord Sri Krishna also descends, and because of this, there was some particular alteration. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of the Vasu fisherman, and the father was the great Parashara Muni. That is the history of Vyasadeva's birth. Every millennium is divided into 3 periods, and each period is called a Sandhya. Vyasadeva appeared in the third Sandhya of that particular age.